Hi guys, I am Vitold, and after searching on the internet in places like ADV Rider Forum, I noticed that there's so much confusion in terms of differences between BMW F850GS and F850GS Adventure. I heard that some of our fellow riders would ask BMW salespeople and still not get even half of the relevant information. So I gathered all that for you here to clarify it once and for all. And this is supposed to be a go-to place now if you want to know how different those two bikes are. And they are, but not in all the areas that some riders sometimes think that they are, which might be a surprise. So let's first cover what is the same, while sometimes is being confused because, for example, of some differences between the bigger BMW R1250GS and its Adventure version. Then we will go through all the differences and how they both ride, as there are some subtle differences, and then what they both can have as options and what the purpose of one and the other is. So what is the same? Number one is the powertrain, so the engine. F850GS and F850GS Adventure both have exactly the same engine with no changes to it. The power of 95 horsepower and 92 Nm of torque, they are identical, and also at the same RPM. There has been no map changing whatsoever. So no changes here, so that they ride almost exactly the same in terms of performance. Almost, as in the end there will be a tiny difference, even though mechanically they are the same. Both bikes are propelled by chain, and the second area in here there is the most confusion is the suspension. In the case of the biggest GS, so the 1250, there are some significant differences between the regular version and the Adventure one. The Adventure has longer wheels travel, so it has higher ground clearance, it has slightly different angles because of that, and the suspension would be in general more soft, simply because of that longer travel. Now, this would also contribute to that Adventure, I'm talking about the 1250 still, to that Adventure being taller with a seat height being larger. So it's taller to sit on. But it's not the case here. BMW F850GS and F850GS Adventure have the same suspension. What BMW mentioned on their official websites, but I find it hard to believe anything that's there on BMW websites, is even for the same model, it's sometimes different depending on a country, while the bikes are the same in those areas. Now, even if regular 850GS had 126 millimeters of the caster and Adventure version had 124.6 millimeters, it's pretty much the same still. The front wheel travel, the rear wheel travel, ground clearance, all components and design are the same. So they ride in an almost identical way. Almost. Again, because there may be a slight difference in theory, just like with the performance, and it's actually based on the same reason. And I'll get to that. As for the numbers, especially wheel travel, there are opposing pieces of information listed on different BMW websites. So what I've heard is that this new F850GS lost some of wheels travel when it was redesigned and named 850 instead of 800. And having this in mind and comparing some data on the internet, which is the most trustworthy source at the moment, I guess that F800, the previous one, the first generation of this bike, had 23 centimeters of front wheel travel and 21.5 centimeters of rear wheel travel. Now, if you go to BMW's original BMW Germany website or my local Polish one, you will see that those are the exact numbers that BMW are stating for their newest 2021/2022 BMW F850 now GS. So they claim that the numbers are the same, and on top of that they are consistent with the current 850GS but Adventure. I know there's confusion. Still, that could work, yeah? 850GS and 850GS Adventure have the same figures. However, if you dig deeper and check the UK's website or even BMW USA website, you will see that for the regular 850GS, they state different numbers. It's not that they are in inches, by the way. No connection. For the front wheel travel, There, in the UK and the US, they mentioned 20.4 centimeters wheel travel, and for the rear, it's 21.9. Okay, so since BMW representatives announced that the front wheel travel had been reduced with the newer generation with the 850, these numbers could make sense actually. The problem is that when we look at the adventures data there, they again state the same numbers as for the previous F850GS. Both regular and adventure, so 23 and 21.5 centimeters. And I actually cannot, in the end, make any sense out of this. And at the moment, I believe that BMW representatives have no idea. But what's important for us is that we may be close to certain that F850GS and F850GS Adventure do not differ from each other. So that's what this is about. Still, I'm totally not surprised that so many people get so confused, since BMW is officially stating wrong data out here. If there's one data here and another data here for the same thing in the same area, one of those has to be wrong. so come on, that's ridiculous. Just as on the Polish website, after someone at BMW Google translated the text, it turned out that in one of the opening sentences on the F850GS's website, that's actually not a motorcycle, but a bicycle. In Polish, it's a significant difference and has nothing in common with each other, while in English, you may call a motorcycle a bike, while a bicycle may also be called a bike. It's clearly being translated with some translator and nobody ever freaking checked it. Shame, shame, shame. Anyway, let's deal with getting to the facts, because that's what you came here for. Rims of the both Adventure and the regular F850GS are nowadays the same, and both versions get cross-spoked wheels. And as a hint, this is also the first most visible difference between the 850 and the 850 right now and the 750GS, so the smaller one. The 850 and 850 Adventure both have 21-inch tires in the front that are pretty narrow, being 90 by 90 size, and in the rear there are 17-inch tires that are 150 by 70. If the suspensions are the same, so is their ground clearance. And so there are no benefits here for the Adventure, but guess why? Because at 24.9 centimeters, they are both incredibly capable already. That's almost 3 centimeters more than BMW R1250GS. Look at this Adventure, which has 22 centimeters and almost 6.5 centimeters more than a regular R1250GS with its 18.5 centimeters. Now, wow, just wow. You can see which out of those bikes is clearly meant to go off the road, and I mean 850GS, despite their version, and not the R1250GS. But that doesn't mean that their seat heights are the same, as they aren't. And the Adventure is indeed higher here. But not because the bike is higher or because the suspension is higher, but only because BMW decided to install a taller seat on the Adventure. For the regular F850GS, it's at 86 centimeters, and for the Adventure, it's at 87.5 centimeters. And you may also lower the bike if you like what it offers, but you feel it's a little bit too tall for you. I mean, both bikes you can lower. First step would likely be installing a lower seat anyway. So if what you are after is a higher position with a taller seat, you could just as well get yourself a regular F850GS and simply install a taller seat, which would make you sit on it pretty much just like on the Adventure. Just not fully, as there are again some tiny differences connected with the next point. And it's the fuel tanks that are different. And this causes a large number of other differences between those bikes following there. So first of all, their fuel capacity is significantly different, with F850GS having 15 liters of fuel tank capacity and the Adventure having 23 liters, so 8 liters more, and that's just over 50% more, and that basically means that you may ride for almost 50% longer without refueling on the Adventure. And if you like that, you simply have to go for an Adventure. There's no other way. And assuming 5 liters of fuel consumption per every 100 kilometers ridden for both of these, it's 300 kilometers of range for the regular 850 and 450 kilometers of range for the Adventure. Not exactly, but somewhere there. It's tempting, but it also translates into probably the second biggest difference that influences also other features of the bikes. And I'm talking about the weight. Weight with at least 90% tank full of fuel is for the F850GS 233 kilograms, and for the Adventure it's 248 kilograms, so 15 kilograms more. At 90% of fuel tanks filled with petrol, the difference in fuel weight alone, which is around 740 grams per liter, is 5.3 kilograms of those 7.2 liters of difference, because 90% of 15 liters for 850 is 13.5 liters, and 90% of 23 liters for the Adventure is 20.7 liters. So the difference is 7.2 liters, and those weigh 5.3 kilograms, and that's only the difference in fuel weight between the two. So there's the fuel tank itself and additional equipment of the Adventure that you are getting, and you likely won't feel that the Adventure is suddenly sluggish or it's suddenly heavy, but it leads to two things that are promised to mention, and that is some super tiny difference in performance and perhaps a little bit more noticeable difference when it comes to suspension. Knowing that the previous F800GS and its Adventure versions both had the same suspensions, the Adventure one with a taller seat felt so much more comfortable to me. I felt like that suspension was the most comfortable ever, and I rode both the regular and the Adventure. Weight was one thing, so it was harder for any bumps or potholes to influence the heavier Adventure and shake its body, its chassis. And the other thing was a taller seat that actually has more padding, and that may be nicer for your butts. So here the reactions of the suspension might be slightly different, but I would still recommend you guys to get both bikes for a spin with tanks full of fuel. You may like the slightly lighter feeling of the regular F850GS or the more comfy and less influenced by the road irregularities Adventure version. So see, it's not like they are identical, even though the data may suggest that. Next difference is that the same suspension in the Adventure has to already carry more weight, so payloads are different, and you can carry less on the Adventure that you can carry on the regular F850GS. So you can jump on the regular 850 with additional 212 kilograms in total, and on the Adventure version with 207 kilograms, so 5 kilograms less. Now let's move to some extras that the Adventure benefits from quite nicely, and they also add that extra weight here. On some markets the Adventure may come with a taller windshield, and both bikes have them adjustable in the same way, and both windshields, even the one that BMW calls touring in the Adventure, in some markets at least, it doesn't do much. It's way too short to direct the windstream away from your helmet. Now if you are into touring, just get yourself a properly tall windshield. And if you're more into off-roading a bit, it may make sense to keep it so that it doesn't distort your view at any point and you won't collide with it while flying over the handlebar. Hopefully it won't happen to you, but if you like those kinds of sports, here you've got the information. Now, what tends to be a rule on all markets is that the Adventure has additional side wind deflectors that the regular GS doesn't, and that's definitely an advantage for the Adventure. And the next thing is that the Adventure has different riders' foot pegs. They are not covered in rubber, but they are entirely made and entirely therefore covered with metal. They are also wider and with a design that helps you keep your feet on them in thick motorcycle boots. Just watch your legs, and hitting them also hurts accordingly more. It has been actually mentioned that they are height adjustable, but I wasn't able to confirm it if it's only for the Adventure or for both. So there's a question mark here. But there's also an adjustable brake lever and a gear lever for the Adventure, and for the regular 850 that's an option. I still suggest that you confirm that with your dealer in your country. Probably they will not know, and I don't think it's actually any different, but you'll at least have a good conversation started for when you get to BMW. And now let's get to what's even easier to notice, and that's basically all the front fairings and front lights covers. In the Adventure they are larger and they look slightly differently. One of the reasons is that they wrap around a different larger fuel tank in the Adventure, so they simply need to be different to fit properly. And you can immediately see that the side fairing goes way down in the Adventure, and this is also the easiest way of telling them apart. And also the front beak or a fender is a little bit different in both of them in terms of design. A cool thing now in the Adventure is that it's coming already with the crash bars, which actually weighs something, and it's awesome that it's actually coming with them because that's needed in any bike, and F850 doesn't have them by default. The Adventure also has a plastic skid plate, so this protection cover underneath the engine that the regular 850 used not to have in my market, but now apparently it does, so it looks like they both have it. It would be worth to double check that in your markets. Now both bikes can be equipped with an aluminum skid plate down there. The next thing is handguards that come with the Adventure and are just an option on the regular 850, and I would definitely go for them, especially that configuring the bike on the BMW's website, the price is $0. So I definitely recommend getting them, as it's a truly great deal. The rear luggage rack is also different in both bikes by default, and it's visibly longer in the Adventure. However, you may order the regular 850 with it. If you decide to get yourself aluminum side panniers, it's right there to be ordered for the Adventure and not for the regular one on the website. Both bikes are factory equipped with quick release system for BMW side panniers. That is absolutely brilliant, as you already have all you need on stock bikes to install them. You don't need anything more. Aluminum ones require a separate rack, and that may further increase the weight of the Adventure by a few kilograms, since you may order them for the Adventure one. And actually, the original mounting spots are where the aluminum side rack is mostly connected. So in fact, my thinking tells me that you might just as well buy the rack separately and install it on the regular F850GS if you really wanted to. So in the end, we should put this into the category of what they both can have and not the real differences, even though BMW tries to tell us that only the Adventure can have the aluminum racks. And this is how it was supposed to be, as we are moving to this category right now. We've got all the relevant differences covered by now. Yep. But listen to this. The front lamps are LED, yet when you are configuring both bikes, BMW still allows you to get a front LED lamp if you pay additionally. Is it the bike didn't have it already, right? Well, it cannot be both as standard and as optional equipment. So what BMW originally meant was that the full beams are as standard, but LED daytime running lights are there only if you pay extra. Just check it out in the press release. It's the same for both F850GS and the Adventure. So no gains here for the Adventure. Same with my favorite keyless access, that they both can have extra, and it's great as it allows you to keep the key in your pocket at all times and start and switch the bike off by pressing a button while you are on or right next to the bike. And you may also open the fuel cap and close it without inserting the key. Just you first need to turn the ignition off. There may also be tire pressure control system that displays pretty accurately, or rather very accurately, the pressure in both tires, and I think it's a necessary addition to those bikes. Another things are heated grips, cruise control, electronically adjustable suspension, ESA, SR, which I find not worth the money, I think. There may be a quick shifter that allows you to switch gears up and down without using the clutch if you like that, for whatever reason. There may also be additional riding modes and strictly accessory types of things like a center stand or a front lamp cover or those panniers. So basically, if you are not familiar, all these options are pretty much the exact same options that the bigger GS can have too, R1250GS, and that's crazy. That one may also have something like heated seats, but in terms of additional features and gadgets, coming from the factory, it's all basically the same. And I think that it's cool to give every bike so many cool or useful things as option. And all right, so now you know how different those motorcycles are, or where they may differ at least. But what about the prices, since we see that the Adventure has some extra features? The question is if it's worth the extra money, knowing what you may or what you for sure are getting for it. It is a very relevant question, since you can build your Adventure yourself if you aren't interested in the larger fuel tank, and you may skip items that you otherwise couldn't skip in the Adventure and would have to pay for them even if you wouldn't want to have them. And hey, right now, with the current paint jobs in 2021 and 2022, you are not even getting a sticker saying that your Adventure is an Adventure. There's nothing, not even a small letter like A, GSA, indicating that it might mean an Adventure. And I think that they could have added the name of the Adventure to the fairing next to F850GS. I think they should have. Anyway, you may print a sticker yourself. So the question is it worth it? It depends. But the price difference is, well, it's less than 6% more for the Adventure. It's 650 euros difference, as the regular 850GS costs 11,350 euros right now in the end of 2021, while the Adventure is 12,000 euros here on my local market. So, well, I think that having an ability, at least an ability, a possibility of putting 50% more fuel, if you want, it doesn't mean twice as much fuel, it means 50%. So this one has one and this has half more of that, okay? So if you want, you've got that chance. And having wind deflectors and already having crash bars could be enough, I think, to convince me, myself, to go for the Adventure. If you don't want the extra weight, just fill the tank only in 50% and you'll be closer to matching the regular one's weight. I'd say that's simple. And just remember about one thing, which is that by default the Adventure has this higher seat, taller by 1.5 centimeters. But then if you're not tall enough, just get yourself a lowered seat. Don't push going for an Adventure or end keeping that taller seat, because then on some loose, uneven or just slippery surfaces, you are greatly increasing your chances of dropping your beautiful 850. Good thing is that you already have crash bars on an Adventure, so if you push it that way, at least if you fall, it's more safe. But still, they do get scratched and then you have to paint them or replace them. So what's the purpose of one and another? And I think it's simple, and it comes down to just one main thing, and that is how often you want to do long journeys. If you do want to do them at all, then over 50% of additional fuel tank capacity is great, and you cannot just add that to the regular 850 if you change your mind in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have to get the Adventure to have that possibility. If you don't care about that, then in general they are so close to each other that it won't really matter which one you choose. So please let me know which of those things actually matter to you guys the most, and so which version you would prefer. And let's see what happens. And I hope that this video was as helpful as humanly possible in understanding the differences and potential differences between those bikes. And if you found it useful, just go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!